Sun Devils basketball is 2 games away from finishing out the regular season. We're going to talk about our overall thoughts on how everything went.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thanks as always for making Locked On your first listen of the day, and a special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast, and stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. And on today's edition of the show, we are going to be taking a look at the basketball team and breaking down the last 2 games, overall thoughts on the season, and if there's a chance that they can make the March Madness Tournament. Spoiler alert, it's next to slim to none, and Slim just left town. So we'll get there. We're going to start the show by talking about the final 2 games of the season for Arizona State tonight at 9 p.m. So, make yourself an extra cup of coffee or get yourself an energy drink to stay up for this bad boy. Is going to be up against USC. Probably the streakiest team in the Pac-12 this year as a compliment. And, they are not a very good basketball program this year. They're 11th in the conference. They definitely squandered what was supposed to be a lot of good players, from Boogie Ellis to Bronny James did not do anything. And they have very much underachieved. But, of course, that doesn't mean that ASU is going to beat them for sure, especially because you're on the road. And ASU has also been a very streaky team this year. They've had a lot of winning streaks and a lot of losing streaks. And in their last 4 games, they have lost 3 of them. ASU is entering this game tonight 8-10 in the conference, which is all that matters. USC is 6-12. And USC is also looking to end the year on a much hotter note. Right now, they've got Isaiah Collier, who's just been going crazy for them. He's led them in scoring the last 2 games with 55 points in total, including a 31-point performance last Saturday against Washington. So this is not an easy game at all. Now, before tonight, I think that there was a lot of hope that we could have won. And the last time we played them, we did beat them. But also keep in mind, that was just a horrible stretch for USC when they had lost 6 straight. This is a much different team than when we last saw them. And I am not going to be going into this game under the assumption that we are going to mollywop them and we are going to be able to dominate that kind of competition again. Because even though USC is not a very good program this year, they still have talent. I mean, Boogie Ellis was somebody that has been talked about as a next level player. I even remember there were, before the season, keep that in mind, there were mock drafts where he was the number 1 pick for the 2024 NBA draft. Like, this kid is talented. And I am afraid of him to get hot and dominate. And Isaiah Collier, man, he's a really good player. And Bronny James is a name at this point, in my opinion. That is not a challenge. I am not hoping that he's going to come out and play some really good basketball, but I don't like this game. I'm not sitting here and I'm like super pessimistic, but I'm also not overly confident that the Sun Devils can win this game tonight. With the way they've been playing, I mean, they're not beating a lot of teams. They just aren't. Like, they played a very sound game against Washington State, but that was such an outlier for them. Because outside of that game, you've lost, oh my God, every other matchup this year. Like, you fell to Oregon, Oregon State, Stanford, Cal, Colorado, Arizona, Washington, and Arizona again, all within a month stretch. Month and a half, I should say. That does not give me confidence that you can beat anyone right now. Again, like beating Washington State, who was one of the best teams in the Pac-12 this year, if not the best, that is such an outlier for everything else that we have seen from this team right now. I don't feel confident about this game. Could we win? Absolutely. We beat them last time, and ASU is a streaky team. So there is an opportunity for them to play good basketball. If Frankie Collins, Frankie Five Fingers comes out and dominates, if Jose Perez is able to consistently get to the line and make his shots in the paint, which has been a struggle for him these last few games. Adam Miller, he just needs to be able to consistently shoot the ball. He feels like an all or nothing guy. He's either getting you 5 points or he's getting you 15. Hopefully you get the latter, Jemiah Neal, streaky player as well, but a good player. So they do stack up against a USC team that's got a couple of studs, but again, it's just the streaky nature of these guys that makes me nervous. And then on Saturday night to close out the regular season is playing UCLA. And that is another very streaky team. They've had a 4-game losing streak. They had a 6-game winning streak. They had a 4-game losing streak. So very poetic for the Sun Devils to end their 2023-24 season, regular season, with two of the streakiest teams in the Pac-12, especially when they are a very streaky team. And UCLA is currently on a 4-game skid, and they play Arizona tonight, which in theory that should be a loss for them, but who knows? They just went through a lot of changes this year. You lost Jaime, oh my God, of course, Jaime Jaquez. That's what it was. Jaime Jaquez and a couple of other guys from last year. Adam Bona is a very good player for them, but they drastically took a step back this year. In fact, between these two games, between USC and UCLA, I'm almost more confident against UCLA. And I'm still not all in. And honestly, I don't even know if it's because of the competition. I think it really has to do with Arizona State right now, because they should be able to win these two games. They should, in theory. But that's not where you win basketball games. You win basketball games by being able to put together a full 40 minutes and, doing everything else right. And it's so much of the shot selection for ASU. It's so much of the inability to rebound for ASU. The coaching is just really up and down. Like, there has been so many different factors in here for Arizona State that makes me nervous about these last two games. And ASU needs to win these last two games. They're 14-15 right now, 8-10 in the conference. You need to find a way to go 500 in the conference. You need to find a way to have a winning record on the regular season heading into the Pac-12 tournament. That's the way it has to be. No ifs, ands, or buts. ASU has to win these last two games. There is a ton of stuff that is going to be impacting the remainder of the season for the Sun Devils, and what is going to be potentially impacting the future of the Sun Devils basketball team. This is a veteran-laced roster, and you still have struggled this year. Now, you have a lot to prove. You have a lot to prove here, because there's a lot of young guys behind them, but you need to show them that they can carry that torch. And we're going to talk about the overall thoughts on the season here in just a moment. There's a lot of up and down that we've had to see this year, and I got some thoughts on it. So we're going to dive into it in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Passion, drive, patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Wherever you get your podcasts, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. You can stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at Richie Bradshaw36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. Back into the podcast and the conversation now for Sun Devils basketball. Time for my overall thoughts on the season. And we'll go ahead and start it like this. I'm disappointed, but I don't know if I'm overly shocked. And here's what I mean by that, because that's not to be an insult to these kids, because they played their hearts out. And there was a lot of guys who left it all on the court. But the reason why I say I'm not overly shocked is not as a discredit to them, but there was a lot that they had to overcome heading into this season. Because for all intents and purposes, last year was a very quality year for Sun Devils basketball. They made a run in the Pac-12 tournament. They made the NCAA tournament. They were a fun team to watch. They pulled off an upset over Arizona. They did a lot of good things last year, but they did it with transfers. I mean, you had Warren Washington, Devin, and Desmond Cambridge, plus Frankie Collins that were leading the charge for you as starters for the team. That was a lot of transfers to be starting. And Arizona State was facing a very similar situation this year. Frankie Collins returned, Jemiah Neal returned for them to be starters, but then you were bringing in Jose Perez, and you were bringing in Adam Miller and Sean Phillips and Bright Salavange and Kamari Lance. Like, you get the point. There was a lot of transition for this team in 2023-24. And I said this a lot before the season started. And my question was, can you capture lightning in a bottle twice? Because that's what you did in 22-23. Was you brought in these veteran players, but everything culminated together, which led to a wildly successful season. That was always going to be a very difficult task to overcome for Sun Devils basketball. Were you going to be able to make it work more than once and find a way to build off of the year before? And building off of that, when you lose 3 starters, is going to very much put you behind the 8 ball. And like, you lost role players too, like Luther Muhammad ran out of eligibility. Austin Nunez transferred from the program. Like, there was so much change that was coming to Sun Devils basketball entering this season. And that's where I say I'm not super surprised. It is nothing to do with these kids and how they played. It has everything to do with the circumstances that they were placed in, that Bobby Hurley was placed in. Oh man, like, how on earth is any team supposed to rebound from this? No pun intended. Obviously, you have your blue bloods, right, that recruit 5 stars on a yearly basis. It's a little easier for them to do that than it is Arizona State, who is using the transfer portal to be able to build these teams up. This is this is not, I don't know if I would call it like not sustainable, but it's not easy for any team to try and do this. There's a lot of programs that go through a ridiculous amount of transfers. Arizona State is not an outlier here, but they certainly were somebody that fell to the situation and the circumstances of the transfer portal, because you could have had Devin Cambridge and Warren Washington return for their final seasons, but they both decided to transfer. I think they ended up at Texas Tech. I can't remember, though. But if you brought them back, then I do think that this season is a little bit different for you. But I also wonder if you bring in Adam Miller and Jose Perez, who have been very important players for the team this year. There was just so many different obstacles for them to try and hurdle this year. So again, just to emphasize, I'm not surprised by the circumstance, not by the players. But on the topic of the players, there's a lot of room for improvement. You can tell these kids want it. Nobody's out there playing lackadaisical. Nobody's out there being lazy. Nobody's out there not trying their hardest. But it feels like there are times these kids look defeated. There are times it looks like these kids are in their heads because they just can't make shots. And there are a lot of times that it looks like these kids are just learning to play together. It's difficult to have these kids come in and immediately have the chemistry with each other. One of the reasons that it worked last year with the Cambridge brothers and Warren Washington, they played pickup ball with each other. All three of them played pickup ball with each other. They knew each other. They had relationships with each other. So yeah, it was a little easier for them to come in and have that kind of chemistry. Whereas with this team, sure, Adam Miller and Sean Phillips Jr. played together at LSU, but Miller missed some time due to injury when he was with the Tigers. And Sean Phillips was not a full-time starter with the team. And that doesn't help. And Jose Perez played a lot of college basketball at a lot of different programs. And you bring in Bryce Silvanga and Kamari Lands, who were not overly familiar with each other, if at all. Like, there was just a lot to overcome here. And it's not the fault of them, but it's just difficult to immediately expect these kids to come in and play sound basketball. Yeah, you brought in a lot of transfers last year, but again, 3 of them were close with each other, and that helps a transition. This year, none of these kids really had any time with each other. Besides Miller and Phillips Jr., like, this was always going to be difficult. And that's where it brings me to my thoughts on the season. And I would tell you that it was always going to be this way. And I don't know that it was fair to come into this season and expect these kids to play such good basketball that you were going to make it to the tournament again, or you were going to make a run in the Pac-12. I just don't know that that was realistic expectations. And I definitely tried to temper my expectations coming into this year because of that. I will tell you, moving forward, as long as the core of these guys return, because you could always see guys transfer out, as long as Collins, Miller, Neal, and Phillips Jr. are back, I do think you're going to be better in the upcoming season. You bring back Kamari Lands, you bring back Brian Silvanga, you're going to be better. Now, unfortunately, there are going to be transfers. And I'm hoping that you bring your young guys back too. I want Braylon Green back. I want Akil Watson back. I want our incoming freshman class to be able to stay intact. There is hope for next season that if the core of these guys return, you could be better. But for this season, it was always going to be difficult. Just to really emphasize that. It was always going to be difficult to find a overly successful season. It just is what it is. It's nobody's fault. It was just the circumstance. Now the big question, however, is can these guys find a way to rally and get to the NCAA tournament and go dancing for March Madness? We're going to talk about that in just one moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to talk to you guys about our friends over at Amazon Fire. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as Fire Stick TV that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the upcoming college basketball tournament, you're always going to want to have your Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On too, and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into the game analysis, highlights, and keep you up to date on all the latest in the sports world, March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me, to learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. One last time, wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. And shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's wrap up our podcast like this. Do the Sun Devils have a chance to go dancing? Do they have a chance to go to the tournament? Do they have a chance to make any noise? Like I said at the top of the show, slim to none, and Slim just left town. This would have to be a perfect storm for the Sun Devils to make the tournament. It starts with winning your final two games. You have to beat USC. You have to beat UCLA. You cannot split them no matter what. You cannot go into the tournament, the Pac-12 tournament, that is, with a 15-16 record. You can't go in with a 14-17 record. You're not getting in. The only way you're going to get in is winning these last two games and making some ridiculous noise at the Pac-12 tournament. And more than likely, you're going to have to win it. And to win the Pac-12 tournament would be unprecedented for this program. Quite frankly, I would be happy to win a single game in the Pac-12 tournament because you are going to be one of the lower seeds. Right now in the Pac-12, you are 8th. You could be lower, especially if you lose both games. Like, you could end up being 10 or lower. You need to win these last two games. If you find a way to do that, there is a little bit of hope for you. Right now, if you win these last two games, you should be able to leapfrog Cal, depending on how they finish their final game of the year. You'll get in front of UCLA. You will be right there with Utah. And you won't be passing Oregon. Not unless Oregon loses out. But no, even then, they would still be ahead of you. The highest you will be able to get would be the 5th seed right now. That's best case, especially because you would face the lowest seeded team, right? 4 teams get a bye. I think it's 4 teams get a bye. But either way, you would just be in a very good position to face the lower, if not lowest seed in the Pac-12, which right now would be Oregon State. And Oregon State has been anything but a great team this year. Now, with that said, you did split your series against them. I don't know how you make it to the tournament right now. That's my best estimate. And really the only way is to win the Pac-12. Because at that point, the winners of the conference will get a bid into March Madness. So that's, to me, your only way. I just don't know if there's any other way to get there. You would, even if you were second, I mean, what would that make you? If you went out and you get second place, that would be like 19 and 15, 20 and 15, something like that, depending on how many games you play. That would be your best case scenario, would be to win out. That's it. That is it. And you did not play well against Arizona this year. And sure, you got an upset over Washington State, but can you do it twice? I just don't know. Oregon beat you. Can you beat Oregon? I don't know. Probably not. This is tough. That's it. It's tough. It is going to be incredibly tough to be able to overcome these circumstances, to be able to make it to March Madness, to be able to make any sort of noise in the Pac-12 to end the year. Now, what I will say to kind of wrap this up is finding a way to win out these last two games of the regular season and finding a way to make noise in the Pac-12 tournament should be able to really help you for the upcoming season. And I will go for the future, but for 2024-25, it should really help you to take that next step. That's what I'm hoping more than anything right now. Not getting to the tournament because, again, I don't think that's a possibility right now. But finding a way to make enough noise and build enough momentum here that you can use it to build for the future, at least for the upcoming season. And hopefully some kind of run will be able to keep some guys home. And really the only guys I'm confident will return would be Adam Miller and Sean Phillips Jr. Outside of that, I mean, Frankie Collins, I'm pretty sure will have a graduate transfer remaining for him. I would hope he stays and gets to be an all-time Sun Devil. Jose Perez out of eligibility. Jemiah Neal could transfer. He entered the portal last year. He came out. That's a very real possibility that he's gone. Lonzo Gaffney is out of eligibility. I think Selavange and Kamari Land should be back. You hope you keep your freshmen with Watson and Green. You hope you can hold on to Malachi Davis. Even though he didn't get on the court much this year, you still want that depth. And hopefully your recruiting class stays alive. To do all of that, you got to make noise to end the year. I would say you need to win 4 more games to end the year to really have confidence moving forward. That would be my feeling. I want to know what you guys think, though. Is there any chance for the Sun Devils to make any kind of run? Can they win out these last 2 regular season games? Can they win the tournament? Can they make it to the finals? Are they going to go dancing? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrads36, the podcast as well, at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your podcast, so hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. And one more time, a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. With these final 2 games coming up for Sun Devils basketball, we will be back one more time on Sunday for a basketball recap. Depending on when we have the finals for the basketball to be finished, we'll have a final recap there. We still have stuff to talk about for basketball. And of course, we still have plenty to preview for football with spring practices coming up at the end of the month. So tune in, stay subscribed, stay up to date on everything, and I'll see you next time. Until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.